Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Larry McIntosh, and I'll be your host for the next hour and every Saturday morning from 8 to 9. Welcome to the long weekend edition of Food and Friends. Not only are we doing a show this morning, we'll have a special edition of Food and Friends on Monday evening at 7 p.m. 2 episodes of Food and Friends in one weekend. It doesn't get much better than that. My guest this morning is Stuart Murray, Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Good morning, Stuart.
Good morning, Larry.
How are you?
I am so very excited. As you know, we've got some exciting news. We've got the Canadian Museum for Human Rights is opening its doors to the world on September 20th, and we're really excited, Larry.
Now, it's been coming for a while, and you've been involved for a long time, right? But it's almost like Christmas coming up, isn't it? I mean, it's how many sleeps away till that big day?
Yeah, you know, we are counting the sleeps, and it is an exciting opportunity, Larry. And you know, you've been a great booster of why this is such a great province to live in and such a great city and a great country. And I think that for those of us that have been involved in this project, and I've been there for just around 5 years, it is time. It is an opportunity, I think, to do something that fits in with all of the other great things that are happening in this magnificent city of Winnipeg. It's a great time to be a Manitoban, great time to be a Winnipegger, and I think we're going to bring that home on September 20th when we open the doors to the world.
I can't say you're probably more excited than I am, but not much more because, you know, we had the pleasure. We were at a charity event, I don't know, a year ago maybe, where we bid on taking a tour of the museum. So we got to see it when it was under construction. And there was nothing obviously in it other than construction. What a beautiful building inside
Yeah, Larry,
and outside.
It is, and it is. I mean, you know, everybody has an opinion on it, but I would say most of them feel that this is an incredibly sort of iconic building. You know, I use the language that it's going to change the human rights landscape, not only of Canada, but of Winnipeg, but of Canada. And I think the exterior of the building, designed by New Mexico architect Antoine Predock, is really something that those of which I had, by the way, nothing to do with, so put my cards on the table, who chose the architect. The wiseacres that chose this architect were very intelligent because I think it really does create, for those that may not be interested in human rights but like architecture, this is one of those buildings that I believe that within 5 years, Larry, there are going to be people that will stand in front of this building and have their picture taken, and it'll be exactly the same as if you're in front of the Eiffel Tower, the Sydney Opera House. It's that iconic that it'll basically say that you are taking a picture in front of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
And I couldn't agree more. And Shelley and I were flying back from Toronto to visit my mom about 3-4 weeks ago, and we happened to fly over the museum. So we're both on the plane. We're looking out the window. We flew over there, and it brought tears to our eyes, quite literally. It is iconic. It's our signature. It's the postcard picture, whatever you want to say it. It is an amazing building, and certainly I'm a cheerleader for it, no question about it. But it's very exciting.
Well, and you know what, Larry, frankly, I'm a cheerleader for it. I get paid to be so. The real people that matter are people like you and some of your listeners that have been great supporters of this, whether it's just through being ambassadors that talk about it when they travel, or the fact of life is this has been a project that is so unique in Canada in that not only is the federal government obviously supporting this to make it happen, but great support from the province, great support from the city. And the single biggest envelope of contributors, if you will, are the private sector, unions, individuals, corporations, and they're from across Canada and internationally. So lots of people have basically reached into their pocketbooks to say that we believe in this project and we're supporting it. So it's very exciting.
And I think that's the significance, and I think that sometimes gets lost, that people like you and me and corporations and unions, as you said, have reached in their pocket at various levels and put money into that because they think it's the right thing to do as a museum, but it's also the right thing to do for our province. I mean, that's the other side of it.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I always have to sort of go back to the kind of what I would say a couple of visionaries. I mean, Izzy Asper, clearly a tremendous entrepreneur, a tremendous visionary, a great Winnipegger and a great Canadian who had a dream about this. And I also have to give a shout out to Prime Minister Stephen Harper because he was the one that basically said, let's build the next national museum, one that hasn't been created in some 40 years, in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. All the others in Ottawa. So to build the first national museum outside of the Ottawa, the capital region, took courage. And so kudos to Prime Minister Harper for making it happen.
So the road has been, you've been there 5 years, you said?
Mm-hmm.
And it's coming up shortly, and you must be giddy about it. Although I know you're going to remain calm here.
Yeah,
You have to
exactly.
be
Yeah.
getting very excited, but it's just around the corner now.
Yeah, Larry, I'm excited, obviously personally, but I'm excited for all of the other women and men that have been involved in this project over the time. I mean, the construction workers, to be able to go and be a part of that. Sometimes it's minus 30 in Winnipeg. We don't talk about that in the wintertime because, it's just not what we're about. But it is a fact of life that it can get cold here sometimes in the winter. And to see some of these people working on this building in minus 30 and watching them assemble the steel, pour the concrete, made it work. I mean, there's a lot of tremendous passion, heart, and soul, and a lot of people that have been involved in this project. And I believe that they share the same excitement that I do.
And there's no question about it. I mean, again, taking the tour inside, it's not a straightforward square building. There's had to be some challenges. I think one of the workers that what I was talking to said there's no right angles in there at all, and it makes it unique, but it has to make it more challenging too.
Well, and it is very challenging from an exhibitor standpoint because there isn't anything that's square in there. And I guess one of the questions I would ask, if I could, Larry, just for your listeners, because you went through it, I'm a shill for the project. What was one thing that might have stood out in your mind when you went through it, even though it was still a construction site?
That is a fair question, but we're going to have to take a break. So that gives me time to think about the answer.
It's always great to be the host. Always great to be the host.
We'll be right back with Stuart Murray, CEO of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, after we take this break for a weather update. Welcome back to Food and Friends. My guest this morning is Stuart Murray, CEO of the Canadian Museum of Human Rights for Human Rights. You're asking me before, what was my impression of taking that very special tour that we went through a charity event. And I don't know if there's one thing. I mean, it takes your breath away. The Tyndall, is it the rock?
Yeah, the Tyndall stone.
The way you wind your way up. We couldn't go in the actual tower because it wasn't finished that time. There's a small balcony that had an amazing view of the city that I think you're going to have little receptions out there.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was one thing. It was so unique to me.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been fortunate enough to be in museums. We've been to the Louvre in Paris when we were there for a convention, but there's nothing like that I've ever seen, I have to say.
No, Larry, and I appreciate your response, frankly, because I get asked that question, and I've been in that building watching it for under construction for since we've come out of the ground for 4.5 years. And even today, when I've walked in, depending on how the sun is shining, what catches your eye, I mean, you sort of stop for a moment and you're caught up and sort of say, wow, how did Antoine, the architect, sort of envision that would be something that might happen when the sun came in that particular angle? So like you, when I get asked the question, I mean, I don't have one particular space that I think is kind of a favorite, because I don't think I've discovered it yet. There are so many incredible spaces and places to be a part of this incredible human rights journey. It's quite extraordinary.
So we certainly want to spend some time talking about what's going to be happening in the next month and everything else, but I do want to share a story with you because Shelley and I are fortunate enough we travel on business, mostly in Canada, the United States, where we sell our vegetables. And there's two things that in the United States specifically that resonate with me is when we were getting the Jets back those years ago, that was all the talk, even on the non-hockey playing areas. I remember running to a person in San Francisco airport, said, "Oh, you're from Winnipeg, you're getting the Jets back." Didn't know anything about hockey, but was happy for us. Yeah. But the other thing that surprises me is how much I hear about the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Right. It's talked about all over the place. Yeah. People seem to know what's happening. Many people are traveling here when it's opening, and a lot of people are talking about having conventions here.
Yeah, Larry, it is, I think, helped by a number of things. One is, again, coming back to the actual design of the building. I think it's very, very unique. And one of the elements, I believe, and this is where you have to step back and say, Izzy Asper was a remarkable human being. It's almost as if he planned that this should be the time that this Canadian Museum for Human Rights would open. And what I mean by that specifically is that it is time. It's time that we needed a place where we could go in and talk about, different issues and have dialogue and conversation about maybe what makes us different, but why we should understand those differences. And certainly when you look at what's happening in the world today, there is a place that is required to have those conversations come alive. So the timing is exactly when it should be. And I think that that's what's resonating with so many people. I think a lot of people would say, why Canada? Why Winnipeg? And there's great answers for both of those. Mm-hmm. And we are the home for human rights in many ways. And I think that this museum is the perfect home to have this kind of dialogue and discussion.
And I know there's probably been talk about it, but how many people do we anticipate will come to Winnipeg because of the museum? Do you, any numbers kicked around?
Larry, we get asked that, and what we've done is there was an independent study that was done some years ago, but it talked about a number of about 250,000 visitors that we would get. Now, some of those will be from Manitoba and Northwest Ontario, Minnesota, but clearly one of the elements that we're very excited about is that we signed a memorandum of understanding, an agreement, an arrangement, if you will, with Rotary International, and one of the other components of that is that they have a student travel program, and they've got 35,000 offices around the world. And they are going to focus all of their student travel program on one place, and it happens to be in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, and that's the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. And so working and partnering with organizations like Rotary, it has given us a boost. And the fact of life is when we signed it, we didn't have our doors open. We will open our doors on September 20th. But those are the kinds of exciting opportunities that, through partnership, that we're looking forward to.
And is there any sense that from other museums in town that you're going to be taking all the business away? Are they looking at it as that many more people coming to town? And I mean, can't talk for them in general, but as a general question.
No, and it's a great question, Larry, and I think it's a very appropriate question because, I mean, there's no question that we sort of appear to be a big player coming into the sandbox. But really, the fact of life is, unless everybody wins in this game, then we lose. And so my point simply is to say that we're delighted to partner with the Manitoba Museum. It is a fantastic museum, and we're delighted and thrilled because of things like the Winnipeg General Strike, which they do an amazing job of showing their visitors. The Winnipeg Art Gallery is another extraordinary place that it really sort of helps us to have a partnership with the Winnipeg Art Gallery. You go through the Manitoba Children's Museum. There's so many amazing places that already exist in Manitoba. So what we're trying to do is work with them to partner, because I think that that is how, from an economic standpoint, we can all benefit. And I would say that one of the areas that there was some concern is whether initially we would be free in terms of admission. And that would have put the other museums at a huge disadvantage. And, we cannot be free. I mean, the fact of life is that at some juncture, we're going to have to replace a piece of glass. We're going to have to do some upgrades. So we need to build that into our operating budget. And I think, working in fairness with the other museums, partnering is what's going to make everybody win in this equation.
We're talking with Stuart Murray, CEO of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, and we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. It's time for a recipe segment called Now We're Cooking. Now, you don't need to write this recipe down, as it is today's Recipe of the Day at peakmarket.com and in the Winnipeg Sun. Today's recipe is bean and feta cheese salad. Bean and feta cheese salad. And here's what you need for the recipe. 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 3 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar, 2 tablespoons of chopped fresh basil, 1 clove of garlic minced, 1 3/4 cup red kidney beans drained and rinsed, 1 cup of celery sliced, 1/4 cup of chopped onion, and for best results, use Manitoba onions, 1 English cucumber halved lengthwise, seeded and sliced, and half a cup of crumbled feta cheese. In a small bowl, combine the oil, vinegar, basil, and garlic, and set aside. In a large bowl, combine the beans, celery, onion, cucumber, and cheese, and gently mix. Pour the dressing over the vegetables and toss. Refrigerate for at least half an hour to increase the flavors. And this salad can be stored for up to 8 or refrigerated for up to 8 hours. And this recipe serves 4. So it's a great recipe. You should try it out. Again, this recipe is bean and feta cheese salad. It's today's Recipe of the Day at peakmarket.com and the Winnipeg Sun. And you get all the information from either spot. And all the recipes on our website or in the newspaper have both metric and imperial measurements. We'll be right back with Stuart Murray, Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, after we take this break for your 680 CJOB News, Sports, and Weather. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Food and Friends. We're back with Stuart Murray, Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. So next month, there's a lot happening. So can you give us an idea what's going to happen over the next month?
Yeah, Larry, there's a tremendous amount going on, and really it starts with on the night of the 18th, the Friends of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, who have done an unbelievable, and I mean an unbelievably, incredibly good job of getting support from the private sector, unions, individuals, corporations. They're going to have a celebration because we thought that the first celebration should be for the private sector. So that'll be on the Thursday evening. And then on the Friday morning, the 19th, we're going to have our official opening ceremony, which will go from 10:30 a.m. until 12 o'clock.
Okay.
And it'll be live broadcast. We're excited that we've been able to create a deal with Rogers. It's going to be live broadcast on Omni TV and APTN, and locally here, CTV Winnipeg will pick it up. And of course, live stream on our website. So that's going to be exciting on Friday the 19th. And then we really start to open up the whole process to the public, if you will, and in particular on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday and Sunday, there are going to be free tours, free sneak peeks, if you will, Larry, that will allow the public to come through the museum to get a sense of what's inside. Most people have seen the building, as have you, inside, but not the exhibits. And so we're going to allow people to come in. And one of the things that we announced earlier this week is the fact that we will be running those tours September 20th from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and September 21st, the Sunday, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And of course, we will be on September the 3rd. People can go to our website to find out how they can get their free tickets. So they're going to be timed free tickets so we can make sure that it's done in as orderly a fashion as we can.
I was going to ask that question. Okay, good.
But the great part about it, Larry, is that working again, partnering with another major, wonderful organization, the Forks in Winnipeg, we are basically been given the Forks site to create 3 stages where there's going to be lots of entertainment. We have a thing called, we're announcing Rights Fest, which is all about inviting every age group, every person, everybody from who's listening. All your listeners should come down because we're going to have entertainment for everybody. We're going to have a Rights Fest skate, with a skateboard park. We'll have entertainment for kids. We have 3 main stages. We'll be talking about Manitoba musicians. And of course, we did announce earlier on that on the Saturday night, September 20th, from 6:30, there will be a live concert. We'll be featuring 6 amazing, iconic human rights artists, specifically Tribe Called Red, Bruce Coburn, Ashley McIsaac, Marie-Pierre Arthur, Shad, and Buffy St. Marie. So again, being broadcast live, there's a lot of stuff going on, but there's going to be stuff there for kids, for families. It's really a chance while you're waiting for your time ticket to go through the museum that, there'll be activities for you at the Forks. And so it's an exciting, exciting opportunity, and we're looking forward to it.
So how many tickets would you be giving out? Any idea?
We have to limit it to 9,000 tickets, Larry, and we'll be giving some to this radio station, perhaps to your show. We want to make sure that because they are free, I think it's important that the public knows that these tickets are free. It's a free sneak peek, and it's our way really to welcome the people, I think, that have embraced this project here in Winnipeg, to get them through the doors first. It's it's my old rock and roll days, Larry. I'm going back to these backstage passes,
Right.
Maybe everybody gets a bit of a sneak peek behind the scenes. It's going to be very exciting.
So that's say when you said 9,000, I wouldn't have thought you could have got that many people through in a few days there. That's fantastic that you can get that many.
Sure.
That's
great. And we're trying to maximize it.
Sure.
That's why we're going from 9 to 5 on the Saturday and 9 to 4 on the Thursday. So it's it'll be great to get that many people. Just many more people talking about it. And, of course, our official opening, Larry, is on September 27th at 10 a.m. when we open the doors to the public. And that's when, we will be charging admission because we're now an up and running entity. But there's some exciting things happening in this inaugural week leading up to that.
And I know they've talked about the admission prices and everything else, and what you're going to get out of this, and it's more than fair. I mean, think of a cost of a movie. I mean, not everybody can afford to go to movies. I understand that, but cost of a movie, and you can make a whole bunch of analysis, which popcorn costs and everything else. Yeah. This is going to be an amazing experience, and it's very interactive, as I understand it, right?
Larry, there's a lot of digital technology in this museum, so we're not sort of artifact heavy, if you will. Excuse me. We will have digital technology that will engage people. So bring your smartphone when you come, because if you don't have one, we'll give you one. But it's a way to program your tour, program an itinerary, let you know when you go up to one of the places where there's a conversation about particular human rights issues. It might be around women's issues. We can engage people, but the most important part is through your smartphone, you'll be able to capture some of the information there that you may want to take to your kids. You might want to send it back to your computer at home, or just take it away on your smartphone. It may be a project that you're working on. We look at this thing, Larry, as an education on human rights. And I've always made this comment that Nelson Mandela said that the most powerful tool to change the world is education. And this is going to be a human rights journey on the education of human rights.
And I remember back at the Forks, Izzy Asper announced it, and Shelley and I were in the crowd at the time, and we were talking about some of the interactive things, and I was just fascinated by that, and that was a few years ago, but just fascinating, and what a great way to use technology, to be able to take stuff home and study it more.
Absolutely.
And have a takeaway after you walk out of the building. That's
Today I would just tell you that I should say I was yesterday on Friday I was in the museum, and one of the things that we were doing is looking at one of the installations that is a huge tabletop. It's about 40 feet long. But what it does is it takes technology and it talks about some of the mass atrocities we have, but it gives you a sense of how they happen and what took place. But it's all through touch technology. So it's an engaging way to get information through the visitor, but also to capture it on your smartphone and take it away. So this is all about creating a conversation, Larry. And I think that the design of the museum, the technology in the museum will do exactly that.
And I know there's been lots of talk, and I've been tuned into it over the last several years to hear about things. And I'm sure not everything happened exactly the way it was originally planned, because things change as you go along. But if 50% of it actually happens the way I think it's going to, it's just going to be an amazing journey, educational. Certainly, I won't say I'm the most educated in these topics, and I'm looking forward to finding out more about it, and certainly it makes us all proud.
There's a lot I didn't know, Larry, about our history, and I learned it through this. I'm not ashamed to say it. I think that Canada can do a much better job of talking about some of what made this country great. And by that I mean even shining a sort of a light in some of the dark corners.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some things that, we've apologized for as a nation. And I think that we will show that kind of journey to all the visitors when we open the doors on September 20th.
We'll be right back with Stuart Murray, CEO of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, after this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. We're back with Stuart Murray, Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. So, few weeks away. We're going to walk in the front door. So paint a bit of a picture. What are we going to see when we walk in?
Yeah, well, of course, as you know, you walk into this iconic building, so you're going to see something that is really quite amazing. But more importantly, I think, Larry, one of the things that Ralph Applebaum, who was the exhibit designer, one of the best in the world, he basically said, I'm going to make exhibits that will dance with the building. And I thought, what a great metaphor. I mean, how good is that? So let me give you a bit of a sense. So as you start your journey up these ramps, what you're going to start with is, what are human rights? Because, frankly, some people don't know. Some people have different ideas. So we want to introduce people to what are human rights and what are the responsibilities that come with those rights. And we'll take people through 100 milestones. And they're not the most... the 100 milestones might be the same as if you and I were to say, what are the 100 top rock albums of all time? We'd probably agree on 80, and the other 20 would be up for grabs. So we're not saying this is the definitive 100 milestones, but what we're trying to do is to say to people after they've seen the 100 milestones, what did you not see? What did you think we should have had? So we're trying to start the conversation right at the beginning of this journey. And then, of course, we have to pay respect to the fact that we are in Treaty 1 territory and talk about, Indigenous people, both from the First Nations, the Métis, and from the Inuit. We've got an incredible 360 theater that we talk about how they respect the land and some of the elements that they bring in. Canada's Journey is where we look at some of the issues where Canada has apologized, where we've learned from that, how Canada has shown maturity. The Indian residential schools, of course, is going to be a big issue. And then you start to look at Canada's role internationally and what we've learned. And perhaps some of the most exciting pieces of this, Larry, is going to come from people where we feature some of the human rights heroes like Craig Kielburger from, Meadowee. I mean, all of these elements that are going to be brought into this. So the point that I'm trying to paint is that this is not a museum for human wrongs. It's a museum for human rights. And it's a museum where we can talk about some of the challenges, some of the difficulties, but really then point to people through their stories. And by pointing to people through their stories, you engage people in a conversation about how they have made people's lives better. You know, there's only so many Nelson Mandelas and Gandhis in the world.
Right.
It's really up to us to create a journey that people will cease being bystanders when they see things like bullying or racist remarks or anti-Semitism. And we want to be able to give them the tools to inspire them to become better citizens, to make this a better civil society. And so the journey starts with what are human rights, and it takes you up through a series of core galleries that take you to inspiring change, which is really where we give people the tools and the ability to understand how they can stop being bystanders and say, I didn't know what to do. Let's give them some tools to get them engaged. And then, of course, going up into the Tower of Hope, a spectacular view of Winnipeg, but also a spectacular view of an area of Winnipeg that we also know we've got a lot of work to do. This isn't about tub thumping. It's not about saying, look how great we are. It's about saying we've come a long ways, but we still have a lot of work to do in this area. And that's where we're going to engage the people. And that's why I'm calling this the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, the People's Museum.
Wow. So that's very exciting. And you're going to go through there and you're going to learn a lot of things. You're going to certainly take away. And as I said in the last segment, the takeaway to me, I mean, I go to see a motivational speaker. You feel great at the time and you go home and you get back to life. But this is stuff you can actually go home and study. But my other point was, my daughter, who's in her 20s now and going to University of Winnipeg, is much more aware of human rights than certainly I was as a kid. You find the kids today are more aware of that, or
you know, they are savvy. They get a chance to travel a lot. I mean, it's one of the games where technology has you can get engaged with somebody through technology in another country. And, I want to come back to Craig Kilber for a second. You know, he has been able to immobilize so many people to go over to Africa to help build schools, to help build residences. You know, that kind of inspiration, mobilization, I think, is something that is really part of what this journey is about. And I think younger people, and it's why we've put so much effort into technology, is people, I think, at that age use technology to every day of their lives. And if you can bring everyday technology into a discussion around human rights, then the opportunity for them to have a takeaway to actually teach all of us how to make this a better civil society. I think this is why this is going to be such an incredibly inspirational journey for everyone.
So if you had to say the one exciting thing about this project that you personally have, what would it be?
Other than being on this show, I'd have to say watching all of the people that were so engaged and so determined and so passionate about taking this thing across the finish line. I mean, September 20th is simply this. It is the beginning of a long human rights journey that will be in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada for decades and decades and decades, something we can all celebrate.
And there's no question about it. And in your background, you've been involved in rock and roll, Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Blood, Sweat,
correct?
and Tears.
Yes, yeah.
It's kind of followed my career, that name.
Yeah,
So
yeah. You're in politics for a while. You worked at St. Boniface Hospital Research Center. I mean, you've been in a lot of areas, and they've all led up to this moment.
Yeah.
To lead the team that's going to be opening up on September 20th.
Yeah, it's taken every one of those skills and then some. But again, lots of kudos to a great group of women and men who have made a tremendous, tremendous difference. And the point I make to them is this is a once-in-a-lifetime project. And as difficult and as challenging as it is from time to time, Larry, it's something to celebrate because, as I said, I don't know when I'll build my next museum.
And as you say, September 20th is going to come, but that's just the beginning.
Just the beginning. And it's an exciting opportunity for Winnipeg to really show what an amazing city it has been. I mean, we talk about the fact that it's sometimes a bit of a secret jewel. You and I are proud Winnipeggers, proud Manitobans, and a lot of our friends are. But, it's the out-of-towners that come. And when they sort of see how great the city is and what great things are happening in this community, and the Canadian Museum for Human Rights just being another one of those, it's going to be a proud moment for a whole lot of people.
I would agree with you, and it's amazing for Manitoba. It's amazing for Canada, and thank you so much for being on the show today. I know you're crazy busy right now, so I appreciate you making the time on a Saturday morning to come visit us.
You know what? There's no place I'd rather be on a Saturday morning than chatting with you, Larry. Thanks for the opportunity. Really appreciate it. My best to Shelley, by the way.
Thank you very much. We've been talking to Stuart Murray, CEO of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, and we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. Our guest today has been Stuart Murray, CEO of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. It's a great story. We all should be very proud as Manitobans. It's going to come up very shortly. I encourage you to go. We have a couple of shows coming up this week. We have a special edition of Food and Friends on Monday, September 1st at 7 p.m. Yes, 7 p.m., our latest show ever. My guest will be Lisa Disick, Director of Marketing and Communications of the Children's Museum. And then next Saturday, September 6th at 8 a.m., please join me when my guest will be Sam Cates, the Mayor of Winnipeg, who's just finishing up his term up in October. We'll talk to him about his years in office. Thanks to Nicole Bonnikamp, our show's producer. Take care and please don't forget to eat your veggies.